In the last video, we created a new project and added a base terrain to our scene. Hopefully you've had some fun experimenting with the terrain tools and made something you found interesting. In this video, we're going to add trees and some water and a character controller so we can explore the world. And given time, we'll be able to work with some scripts as well to modify game objects. An island makes a good zone to explore, as it's bounded on all sides by water. So that it's a finite area and we can keep all the action in one place. Now this is a little bit different from what I did before, so I'll summarize what I did. First of all, we have a large square terrain. I'm not sure how big I made it before, but this one here is 1,000 by 1,000 units. So this is, since the units are roughly a meter piece, this is a square kilometer area, and you can see the central island is a smaller piece in the middle. I raised the smaller piece above the seabed significantly. I say significantly, I wanted some depth to the water. If I don't raise it enough, it will the water will be very, very shallow. Which, you know, that there are areas, especially like on the eastern seaboard of the United States, where the water is fairly shallow as you go out from the shore. Now I've textured it with two textures, and if I go over here, I've got the double click on that. This is the green, the hills texture, grass hill albedo, and this one over here is the sand. Okay. So I've textured the stuff that's high above the water with the grass, and then stuff that's underwater and at the beach level is going to be the sand. I've still got some work to do over here because we see that there's really no beach on this side of the island. I was just experimenting over on this side here, and it's good enough for this video to get started. Alright, so if we start the game and go into it, what we'll see is, actually I have maximize on play turned off. We see a fixed view, and that's kind of interesting here how it's displayed in the center here. Let's see if I can get a little bit better view there. So it's fixed. I can't move around to do anything inside the scene. So what I want to do is to add in a character controller that will let us move. Now, the character controllers are loaded as part of a import package characters. I've already gone ahead and done that on my project here. You may need to do that yourself. I didn't tell you up front that I was going to use this package because I didn't really think about it, and I'm not even going to try to figure out. I mean, we'll probably use particle systems later, and you know, I'm not going to try to guess all of that stuff. We're just going to import stuff as we need it. It only takes a few seconds. Under Standard Assets, Characters, First-Person Controller, Prefabs, we'll find the FPS Controller. FPS Controller, I'll drag it around here, and in the lower left you can see where the controller is placed. So I'll drag it out here to this beach area and drop them down. Now when I start the game, okay, now since the character controller, I guess it's gone ahead and taken it full screen, which is fine, I can move around the scene. I'm just using WASD, and then I'm using the mouse to rotate my view around. And I can see that I have some grass here underwater, an area that I missed when I was texturing. I can go ahead and deal with that later. I can hold down the shift to move faster, which is good on maps. That's going to be underwater, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Now, I'll probably flatten a lot of this area down later on, because having too much rolling hills is going to be difficult to do stuff in. Also, there are limits that the character controls for climbing inclines. So it gets to a point that it'll just stop. It'll be too tall of an area to climb. And that's great because we want to be able to create barriers, but I don't want to close off the whole island. So I'll worry about that one later. The character controller hugs the terrain, so it's always looking at the height map of the terrain to decide what the elevation is, and it snaps the camera, or the controller in this case, down to that elevation. There's a little bit of head bop going on here as well. We can turn that off, but as I'm moving along, you see that the head is moving back and forth. I've roughed up the area that's going to be underwater because I don't like really lots of smooth stuff. You'll see that part of the map has very smooth underwater features, and I can change that later. Nothing's really fixed right now. There's a little island out there. I may make that bigger later on. This is just a rough tour of it. Okay, I hit escape to unattach the mouse, and then I hit stop, and we're back out to this area here. Now, when it comes to adding water, I think is what the next thing I'll add. So we brought in an environment earlier. There's a whole bunch of different water stuff hidden here. There's water basic, and there's water. And under water, there's water 4. Now, this is my favorite water here. And under prefabs, we see that we have water 4 advanced and water 4 simple. I'm not going to go over all the different water pieces here. I'll just say that water 4 advanced I like. It comes in a square patch, where the other water prefabs are circular, and they can be stretched to a degree. The water 4 can be stretched to a very little bit. We can perhaps double it on the X and Z axis before it starts to look bad. Okay, so what we can do is just just drag that in here, and just drop it down, and you see that well, it's disappeared because it's under the ground. That's okay. I click on move. I get my axis buttons here. I just drag this water up, and if I take it over here to some location, hit play, and go take a look at it here. I'm not sure exactly where it is relative to the camera, but I'm sure we'll find it pretty soon. I should have remembered it. Looks like it might be in front of us here. You can see kind of a hazy thing there, and it's moving. Water 4 is an animated mesh. It's actually 4 tile meshes, and the entire water 4 will itself tile, which is going to be very important. Okay, so this is what it looks like when I get up here. Okay. Now there's some things we can do to change it, but it's a really pleasing look here. You can kind of see through it. Features that are underwater. It moves. There are waves. If we scale it too much, this is unscaled. If we scale it too much, it's going to look really bad. We're not seeing the edges here. Now I've modified this terrain and made the terrain so that it goes down under the water smoothly. So there shouldn't be any areas where we normally see the edges of it. What one would do, hit escape, hit escape, and turn off our, is to set maximize on play, and find a turn off maximize on play. Locate a good vantage point. And if you notice, I have the FPS controller selected right now, so I can take note of where the controller is. So I see 172, 48, negative 117. Okay, now I'm in the play mode, so any of the changes I make are not going to be saved. They're not going to be serialized back to the C++ side. So I'll hit escape in that, and you see my controller position has been reset back to its original spot. But I can change it now. 172, 48, and negative 118. And that looks roughly right where it should be there. So now when I start it, I'm right where I want it to be. So turn that off. once again, I can maximize. And you see I start out with a good view of the water, which is important since I'm going to be making some changes. All right, now we can scale the water up in the X and Z position twice without really hurting anything. Okay, now the default water is 100 by 100. I've now made it to 200 by 200, and this is what it looks like. Okay, I did not scale the Z. I think scaling Z would be kind of nice if I wanted to make it rougher C's or something like that. That still looks pretty good. The edges look pretty good. If I pause this and if I scale this by, say, 5 by 5, not sure what this is going to do. You know, that's up to you, but that's getting a little too blocky for my taste. Okay. We can see the patterns in the water are being a bit much. So 2 by 2, probably a good place to begin. Now, one of the nice things about this water is the tiles. Indeed, the tile is it's already 4 tiles. Okay, so there are 4 tiles there, and I can make another copy of this. I can just duplicate this and drag the duplicate into position, and it will do okay. Now, you really need to get it positioned exactly right. I did not bother to do that, but that doesn't look too bad. Well, we can. I don't know if I can see a seam or not. I seem to think I can at times. The way I've really got around that is to zoom back out and to, since everything is on an even boundary, I can position this at, looks like 400 by 400, 400 by negative 400. I could try. It should be a multiple of 200. So I'm not sure why it looks a little weird here. It's because I'm not really looking at it square on there. But at any rate, 400 by negative 400. And then just duplicate this. No, not the individual tile. This piece over here. Duplicate that, and then take this one over, and we see that it's. Oh, this is unscaled. I see why it is. Excuse me. This should have been. Let's just back up and get rid of these. This should have been. This piece here should have been scaled by 2. All right, now I've got my 200 by 200 thing there, and that does look correct. Okay, we're looking at it from a little offset angle, but it's floating above the ground. I duplicate this. I can drag it over 200 units, so I round it off to the nearest 200. So that's negative 200. And it will line up exactly. And I continue doing that around the island. It's important to leave some distance from the shore, and it's perfectly fine to drag these out here so that they're away from, so that they overhang past the land. We'll have to have something in the game to prevent the player from going out that far. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the visual. We want to make sure that we don't see the edges of the water. And that's going to be hard to do when we have elevations like these mountains, so we have to drag the water out further. One of the things that I can do here is to go to my main camera and set the clipping planes down. Now, it looks like I've already set it down to 100, which is pretty low here, so I've been playing around a little bit here. Yours is probably up around 1000, which is much higher. The closer in that clipping plane is, it will start to fog the camera view so that it's not we don't see distinct edges, and that will give us a nice horizon effect. So go ahead, add in the rest of the water around here, and I will pause and go ahead and do that. Okay, so what we have here now is my island with all of the water drawn in, and there's an awful lot of these things here. And you may ask, isn't that really going to just hurt performance? Well, the camera is only going to be rendering things through within its viewing frustum, so the existence of other water is not going to be an issue. Certainly when we get up to high elevations, we should have more potential to see things. What I found by looking at GPU loading through the Windows Task Manager is that my load actually goes up the closer I get to the water. So we will, let me go full screen on this. We don't need to see this anymore. And why are you doing that? Here. Yeah. We'll worry about that a little bit. Why the character controller? I should have gotten a. Oh. I'm not going to mess around on this, but I thought that I'll adjust the camera later. Right now, the important thing is to see how the water comes up against the edge of the sand. That's one thing I'm going to be looking for, is to see if there's any areas where we're underneath where we can see underneath the water. I tried to take care of all of those things, but if the ground was below the water line, pretty close right in there, it almost seems. If the ground is ever below the water line, there will be a gap between the water plane and the land. Okay, so I'll adjust these shorelines in a little bit, but you can see how water goes out to the horizon. That's good. Kind of jumping a little bit to get over some of this stuff. So this is the effect that I was hoping to get. This is way too rough, though, for any real gameplay. This needs to be smoothed out quite a bit. It's okay to have barriers and things that are going to channel people, but this is just sort of haphazard stuff. And that's good. I mean, that's where we want to start. So we start with something like this. Now, if we can see right here, this is where we can see the edge of the water there. I'm going to need to extend the water out a bit more. I'm really not lagging, not having any performance issues right now, even though there's an awful lot of water and there's an awful lot of shader action going on. This is not a state-of-the-art graphics card. I mean, it was at one point, but this is like a 780 or something like that. It's a 700 series NVIDIA. That head bob's going to have to go because I'm holding down the shift key to run. It's my little island. So we've pretty much circumnavigated the whole island. And you know, I'm pretty happy with that. We see water coming in and leaving. You can see underneath the water there's grass there. That's a texturing issue that needs to be dealt with. Now, I think I can see some spot in that far sandbar around there that may be areas where the water is. We're seeing the edge of one of those water pieces. The land is not quite up to the water line. So that's why you have to just experiment with this to go around. So I'm going to hop over here and see if I can see it up close. Ah, there we go. Okay, very small little defect, but definitely the one there. So a couple things we could do, but the easiest thing to do is to just increase the elevation of the sand right in this area. Okay, but one little defect, it's not bad. And I've got a fairly large area to work with. So flattening out some spots, I can get a lot done with this piece of terrain. This is a good gaming area, a good zone to work with. Alright, so I'm going to pause right here, and then we will pick up and do some more things. Alright, a couple of little changes to make here, and I'm not going to go back and undo them to show you, but there was a warning down here about 2 audio sources. That was because the main camera had one, and the first-person controller has an audio source. I got rid of the audio listener on the main camera and just let the first-person controller's audio listener take that role. Okay, and with that ambiguity gone, when I hit play, we have footsteps. Now I've turned the volume down quite a bit here, and we do that by going to the audio source and adjusting the volume. So the footsteps by default I think are a bit loud. That's the first change that I've made. Now the second thing I want to do is I want to add in some trees. There are 2 different ways we can add trees in. Okay. Now if we go to Game Object 3D Object Tree, we get to do the tree creator here. Unity comes with the speed tree system here, which is an incredibly valuable add-on. That was a lot of money back in the day, and so it's a great tool to play with. The easiest way is just to go to Train and use the paint trees. Okay, and we'll have to say, well, it says no trees defined, so we'll edit trees, and then we'll add a tree, and then we'll get this. We can create our own tree, or we can go to the prefabs here and find ourselves like a broadleaf tree. I say, this is the tree I want. All right, let's zoom in here. And now I'm going to be able to paint them in. And I can say, how big of a brush do I want? So that's going to be the area, this blue area is going to be where the trees are going to go. How dense are the trees going to be? 83 is a bit much. I'm going to dial it down. Look, we're getting random tree heights. I'll get the heights. This is probably pretty good here. So let's just zoom in here and kind of zoom here, and then I just click on here and I see it put a few trees in. Whoa, that's way too many trees there. So if I hit Control Z to undo that, and I'll drop the tree density way down. And then I'll paint in some more. Whoa, okay. If you have to use a very light touch, it would appear. And so I'll just click in my scene. This gives us a view. This island is not as big as I'd thought it was. You look how big these trees are. So I may need to increase the size of it as I go along. It's alright. Now, I believe that there's a palm tree. There used to be. Here's a palm tree. Add. And I know it's going to look really weird to have a palm tree in here with these other trees. Those look really small. Alright, let's see what it looks like now with this. So far, no trees. Okay, here we go. See, those trees up there are huge. These palm trees down here are much smaller. Now, if you look carefully, they're not all identical. They may look very similar because they're using similar rules to generate them, but these are all procedurally generated. And that's one of the nice things about speed trees is that it uses shader programs to generate these trees. Okay, and we can go through them. The physics is letting us do that. Deal with that later. You can see where I put some trees in here, and I'm going to head back up here and take a look what's going on. Now, we can erase individual trees this way. I'll climb up this, even though this is too tall of a thing. Alright. These are good sized trees. They look very nice. And these trees should be billboarded too, which you can see there's a little bit of problem when you put a tree on a hill. We just go in and touch that up by changing the elevation of the terrain a little bit. These are not individual objects. I cannot move a tree like this. Okay, and by that I mean we don't see anything here in the hierarchy for them. There's no tree objects here in the hierarchy, which means that we can't interact with them. They're just for decoration. Now, if we do want a tree that we can interact with, we can create them through 3D object tree. And now I can, now let's put a tree down here. And where are you, tree? You've placed yourself in a weird location. Not what I hoped for. Okay, so let's drag you over here. And I'll just double click on that. And you see these underground. And okay, now you can change a lot of different tree properties here in these sliders there to custom make your own tree. And the advantage though is that it lives underneath this hierarchy, and that'll be important later on because when it comes to doing things like targeting things in the game, I'll set it up so that we can target individual objects that are in the hierarchy. So if we wanted to be able to cut down a tree, we'd be able to target that. We cannot target these other trees. Well, this custom tree is kind of boring. It's been a while since I've played with the tree generator. It used to be that we could generate trees that were, you can see it's untextured and it doesn't have any branches or anything off of it. So we will work with this one later. I'm not going to deal with it right now. We just want to get some feeling for things. So what we've done here in this video, though, is we've added in the water and some trees, as well as fixing the audio. And there's been improvements to the terrain to make this island. What's coming up is going to be, now you can see up here, this is a good indication here. We can see the edge of the water. So more water is going to need to be added. I'm going to either need to add more water or to shrink my hills down. Or I can dial back the camera settings. Alright, well that's good enough for right now. And then next time we will proceed with maybe going with some 3D models in our scene.